Coaches, today before we get started, I want to thank our sponsor, CoachPad. No matter if you draw scout cards by hand or use a program on your computer, CoachPad will give you back time by never stuffing a binder again before heading out to practice. First 13.3-inch electronic device allowing coaches to clearly display scout cards outdoors in the sun has been a game changer for programs this past fall and those currently playing all across the country. This new technology allows coaches to coach and not the monotonous task of stuffing and dealing with binders on the practice field. Check out the CoachPad and CoachPad Mini on thecoachpad.com. Please make sure you check out our sponsors, our affiliates, and here is another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast. Today we have Coach Rich Holzer. He is the head coach at Northern High School in Maryland. If you want to Google it, you might want to hit Northern Calvert High School in Maryland. I mean, it depending on how familiar you are with the Maryland area, because there's technically two Northerns. That's a whole other thing. Coach, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
No problem, Coach. No problem. I would gladly always have any run and shoot coaches on here. I love the offense. But before we get to some of that stuff, I mean, how did you end up at Northern? I mean, you kind of had an interesting long career, 15 years as a head coach. Kind of how did you end up at Northern?
It was, I'm the son of a coach. So, my dad was my coach. And then I got lucky enough to go to, after high school, I went to Hofstra University. I had a couple schools I was looking at and scholarship offers and stuff like that, but ended up playing for my dad's buddies at Hofstra. And I was lucky. I didn't realize it at the time, but I got to play for guys like Kyle Flood, Dan Quinn, Joe Woods, and all those guys when they're starting. Raheem Morris was one of my teammates. All those guys were just starting out in football. So I got a chance to play there with those guys and learned a ton. And then from there, I went back, after football, playing for them, I went back as a graduate assistant, and graduate assistants make no money. And, I wasn't sure if I was going to get hired full-time or not. So my mom said, why don't you coach high school football like your father? So, I applied anywhere I had family, New York, where I grew up, Texas, Georgia, Maryland, and Maryland called me back within the Charles County called me back within, I think, 12 hours of submitting my resume. Next thing you know, I'm driving down to Charles County and I've got a job at Westlake High School for a guy who's in the Maryland State Hall of Fame here, Dom Zaccarelli, who unfortunately passed away. He was a tremendous coach. His son, who I actually got a chance to coach as Coach Zaccarelli's defensive coordinator, he was my middle linebacker and coached at Towson for Rob Ambrose. He came back to take over the program, and I get to coach against him every year in a scrimmage, which is awesome, because it's kind of cool. He still calls me coach, and we're only a couple of years apart in age. And I'm like, Tony, stop calling me coach, call me Rich, So I get to, so I went down and worked for him. We did really well, region finals, state championship, 2008 and all that. And then I took on my first head coaching job at Parkdale High School. I think I mentioned, I took over a program, had 21 kids in the whole program, not varsity, whole program. And then I asked where the footballs were, and the athletic director was like, actually, I don't think we have any. So we had to get footballs too. So took that over, got them turned around from like a 1-9 team to a team that, contended for the playoffs. We didn't make the playoffs, but we were right there. And then went over with my buddy, who was the athletic director at Meade High School, Dave Lanham. He got me to come out, it was, talking to me for 2 years at that point about coming over, taking over the program. So I went over to Meade High School, went to a couple of state semifinals. And then from there, I still, wanted the challenge of moving up. So I went to Mount St. Joe's, a big Catholic school in Baltimore, hadn't won a championship since 1949. Went up there, got to coach a bunch of great kids, like Dante Thornton, who's at Oregon right now, Marlo Wax, Brian Costable, who's a big-time lacrosse player, was one of our quarterbacks. So went up there, we won a championship for the first time since 1949. And from then, my wife and our job, her job kind of shifted south, and it was kind of full circle. I ended up back in Southern Maryland at Northern High School in Calvert County. My kids go to school a mile from the high school. We do all of our, club wrestling, football, baseball, lacrosse, all down that way. And I was driving about an hour and 15 minutes each way to work. And, with little kids and them getting involved in sports and things like that, I figured something had to give. And a friend of mine named Steve Crounce was the head coach there. And this was a different opportunity. I didn't have to turn a program around. It was actually Steve had done all the heavy lifting. So it was really about taking what Steve did. And actually his youngest son was our quarterback this year. And it was about taking what Steve did and just building upon what he had put in place and he actually did the heavy lifting of turning the program around. So I was just basically taking it to the next level, and we won a state championship this year with his son at the quarterback, which was awesome because, Steve got to watch as a parent as opposed to like coaching his son, which, I'm sure he would have rather coach him, but it was probably pretty cool to see his son have that success on the field. So that's where I'm at now. I'm at Northern High School. It takes me 10 minutes to get to work instead of an hour and 15. And, I pick up my kids every day and it's just awesome. And I'm a part of the community and it's a very close-knit community. It's almost a little bit like Friday Night Lights. When we left for the championship game, the entire road down the high school and up Route 4 that leaving Calvert County was lined with fire trucks, police officers, ambulance corps, community members, honking their horns, waving signs, the whole nine, the buses as we left for Navy Marine Corps Stadium for the championship. So it's a really cool place.
Okay, now, kind of before we get into some of the run and shoot stuff how would you, I'm going to rephrase this whole thing because I started messing up my own sentence. And that is, what do you think you've had so much success at so many places? Obviously, players are a big part of that. I think that's the common sense. You don't win. Oh, you can win to a point without players, but you win with players. They're the reason you have to have some players go to state. Let's just be honest about that little fact of life.
Yeah.
But besides the players, why do you think you've had so much success everywhere you go, whether you've been turning around those first early programs, getting some programs over the hump, and then just kind of building off what somebody else has kind of done already for you? Why do you think there's been so much success?
I think it's probably a combination of factors. I think being the son of a coach, I've been around football so much. My first experience is running around a football field when I'm 5 years old, so I don't know anything else. This is what my dad did. My grandfather was into football. So my sister calls it the family business. It's kind of, we weren't big, college coaches. My dad coached in college for a little bit, Division II level. I think he won 2 national titles with Bridgeport University. But that was, a long time ago, 70s. All I remember is running around high school football fields. So I think there's a little bit of that, whereas, some things that people have to learn as head coaches, I kind of already knew, and it was like instinctual a little bit. I guess, because of being around my father. And then I think, I'm myself, whether I go to Parkdale High School, which is in a rough neighborhood in Prince George County, and I show up the first day. The kids joke around. A bunch of the kids were at the state championship. I call them kids, but they're in their late 20s now. But they're at the football game. And they're joking around coach showed up the first day, and he had flip-flops, a backwards hat, Costa sunglasses, and a cutoff T-shirt, listening to country music, and he rolls into an urban neighborhood. And I've always just been myself. What you see is what you get. My wife jokes around about that. She's like, there's no mystery with Rich. He is who he is. So, I think that's it. I think as coaches, sometimes we overthink it. I see that, sometimes with coaches where they're not themselves. They're coming in and they're trying to be they're trying to be this fired up, version of 4 stuff. And I've always just been who I am. And then I think the other thing is as a head coach, you have to, one of the things that kind of I learned early on was, you hear people talk about holding kids to standards, and you have to, but you also have to look at kids individually. You can set team rules, but really team rules, sometimes there's that gray area because one kid may come from a very stable background with great parents and stuff like that. One kid may not have anybody at home. So how do you hold those 2 kids to the same standard? I just don't see it. And, you have to help the one kid more so than the other. I just think that's my personal opinion. So I think some of that plays into it. And then, like you said, I've been lucky. We've recruited the hallways big time, and that's another part of it, getting in there and just convincing kids that they want to play football. And I think one of the things you need to do as a coach, if you haven't invested in this, is encourage your kids to play multiple sports. I'm seeing this now with sons of my own. Kids need to play multiple sports. I really believe that. I took it to a different direction, but when I saw Coach Dodge down in Texas, when I was a younger coach, and he said that if you play dragon football, when he was coaching at South Lake Carroll, if you play dragon football, you run dragon track. And that kind of stuck with me. So now I tell every kid, I don't want to see him till Memorial Day. Like, that's the last state championship in the state of Maryland. I don't want to see you till Memorial Day. You go do other things. Obviously not every kid does it. So we run our weight room just like everybody else does. But I don't get fired up over the numbers. If we have 40 kids in there because 50 are playing a winter sport, I'm fine with that. And we'll open the weight room up at different times so that those kids, if their coaches don't lift them during the season, we'll open the weight room up and say, look, you need 2 days. That's it. 2 days a week, get in and lift. So I think that the combination of that has allowed us to get some of these kids out that normally would not play, because some football programs now are just play football, just play football, just play football. Whereas we're going to get the lacrosse kids, the wrestlers and stuff like that, because we're going to be flexible. If they love wrestling and they love lacrosse and they love basketball and they also want to play football, we're going to get those kids. And those kids are going to make a difference because they're great athletes for us. And we did that at, even with a kid like Dante Thornton, who I had, who's, started the bowl game as a freshman at Oregon. He played 4 sports. He was football, indoor, outdoor, track, and basketball. And I encouraged it. I said, that's fine. We'll work around your schedule. Brian Costable played for me, who was one of the best lacrosse players in the nation. We wouldn't see him Monday through Friday because he was out in British Columbia practicing for the USA national team, and we just worked it out. So I think you got to do those things. Be yourself, be flexible, encourage the kids to play multiple sports, encourage them to be teenagers, and, and just be yourself. That's kind of my big thing. I know it sounds cliche, but I really believe it.
Now, before we get into like your style of run and shoot, because obviously it's a variation. Everybody has everybody has a variation. Let's just be honest about it. Like, absolutely. I mean, June Jones's version in the 2000s is vastly different than Rolo's that was at Washington State before he left there. And wherever Timmy Chang is going to run out Hawaii. And then you got, obviously Wayne Anderson's version, who I've talked to, the Stutzmans, and how they run their variations or how they've been involved with it. And there's a bunch of others. Like if you go to my channel, there's a bunch of different coaches posting, and I know I'm forgetting people as I go. But everybody's got their own variation. But before you got into your variation, why did you get into the run and shoot? What was it about the run and shoot that made you want to look at that offense?
I played it in college. I played for Rob. I obviously was at Hofstra. Coach Matt Sakis had left by the time I got there, but he's a big run and shoot guy. So I've just recently connected with him, which is going to be great. I think I'm going to learn a lot from him. He's been doing a lot longer than I have. But Rob Spence was our offensive coordinator who, for those of you who don't know, if you want to learn about quarterback play, you need to contact him. He's at Georgetown University right now. He's one of the best quarterback coaches I've ever talked to. He's very quiet, flies under the radar, but he knows tremendous amount about quarterback play. He was our quarterbacks coach there at Hofstra. We ran the run and shoot. We had choice. We ran the shallow cross at that time, which we ran it a little bit different than what you would think of. But we had the go route. We had all that in. And we had some great receivers like Marcus Colston, Charlie Adams that came through. We had Rocky Butler, Gio Carmazzi at quarterback. So, I learned the run and shoot from a very early age at 18 years old. And we did so well with it in college. I really believed in it, and we were a little flexible with it. Like we went down to Georgia Southern and played when Paul Johnson was the head coach there, and played a team that had Adrian Peterson on it. And we ran for 356 yards out of 10 personnel, and all we ran was inside zone the whole game. I think we may have run a counter or a quick trap, but I would say the majority of the runs came off of just straight up under center, 10 personnel inside zone. And we were throwing the ball and stuff like that. So I really believed in the offense. And that's kind of what I've translated and brought with me as I've gone on. And obviously it's tweaked. And, we use tight ends now and things like that and two-back personnel. But that's kind of what made me believe in the run and shoot, was being around those guys and just seeing how our offense was successful. And granted, we had some dudes on the team, but, we were, we were a good football team, and, the schemes worked, and it was just, I bought in as a player. So, I figured I could make it work as a coach.
Now, kind of get a little bit more on that. What it makes your variation different? Obviously, you mentioned tight ends and two-back personnel in there, which is, I've seen some of the tight end stuff, but two-back is not nearly as common when you're looking at, especially when you're talking to some of the run and shoot purists. And there's a lot of them. And before we get any further, no, I will not ask you about pass protection. I know the golden rule of the run and shoot. You speak nothing about the pass protection, but how is yours different? Let's start there.
Okay. Well, pass protection is funny. I'm not gonna say anything, but it was funny because I talked with. Yeah, no, I know. It was funny because Coach Billy Ray Stutzman is at the Naval Academy. Me and him Zoomed a bunch of times and stuff like that. And he was like, he's teaching me a whole ton of stuff about, he was a receiver and he's really good. And he knows a lot more than I did, so he's teaching me a bunch of stuff. And I'm like, man, that's great. Just technique stuff. And like this one everyday drill we got from him about how defensive linemen run the hoops, for pass rush. We run the hoops for receivers because it works on our speed breaks and not galloping out of our speed breaks. I was like, this is awesome. It made a huge difference for us this past year. This year is the only year I've done it. I got it from Coach this past summer. And I was like, this is phenomenal. This is great. These kids aren't going to gallop out of the speed breaks. They're not going to beat the drum and do all that stuff and all the 7-on-7 stuff. They're going to speed break out and they're going to make their cuts. And we did it and it was great. So I got stuff from him, but he was like, next time we get on, you're teaching me pass protection. I was like, okay, no problem. Because there's not a lot of crossover, but I think what makes us different is, playing for Coach Flood. He was very adamant about the run game, and he's really good, with his technique stuff. And I learned a lot from him. And over the years, I noticed that with high school kids, sometimes you have a quarterback that just has a bad day. As good as we were this year throwing the ball, or the year before, my quarterback, Billy Atkins, is at JMU. They just have a bad day. They're high school kids. And sometimes you need to run the football to be successful. In 2019, when we played for the championship, and, we're not having a lot of success throwing the ball against a team which we thought we would. And because we had four, like, I'm not going to lie, we had great receivers. We had 4 Division I receivers and an FCS level quarterback. So it's like, that's a pretty nice problem to have, However, we're playing a team that had 5 Division I defensive backs, and we're not, and our offensive line had a bunch of kids that were lacrosse players or at best Division III football players. And all 4 defensive linemen were FBS level signees. And I'm like, just hold on and get run over slowly. We're going to throw the ball all over the place. And we were off. And, but luckily because of what we do, we were able to put tight ends in the game and run split zone insert, outside zone lead. The play that won us the championship was our quarterback checked out of go route. We lined up in tight end trips to the right, and the tight end, as much as people may not like this, was going to run the arrow. And we were going to run the seam read from number 2 to go the up read from number 1. And I told Billy, I said, if you see this look, I said, get us out of it, run off tackle, just run A-gap power. And, how many high school quarterbacks are going to check out of a pass play into a run? He checks out, our tailback runs for a 17-yard touchdown, wins the game, basically. So I think it's that. I think it's out of necessity. You don't always have that quarterback at the high school level, especially in public school. You can't recruit. Private school at Mount St. Joe, I could recruit. I could go out to local youth leagues and find a kid and, be like, come to school. Hopefully we give him enough money and he doesn't go to a rival, or whatever, or a school in DC, but we could always find somebody. In public school, we couldn't. So, and I'm back in public school, so I know that I'm not always going to be able to find that quarterback. So this gives us the flexibility where we can line up, run the football. We can do super power and all that stuff. And, we could still keep our core, go, choice, streak, divide, and all that. but we can run split zone, we can run insert zone, we can run power, we can run counter, we can run pin and pull, and we can make up for the fact that maybe our quarterback doesn't read things well or doesn't throw it as well.
Now, I always ask, like, we're in high school run and shoot guys, is how do you practice to run and shoot? Because college is a little different. Like, they're all going on, they're offense only kids, 100%. Like, you don't have to worry about any crossover, nothing. And where sometimes your best athlete in high school is just going to play both ways because, well, he's your best athlete. I mean, that's just a fact of life. Also, there's time constraints. I mean, let's just be honest, at the high school level, that you don't. I mean, yes, college has their time constraints, but it's a little different. They're not sitting in class in college for 7 to 8 straight hours a day. Their classes are broken up more. Like, I mean, you have actual meetings at college, where high school, your meeting time's a little different. How do you approach practice, and what does your kind of practices look like for the run and shoot, at least offensively?
I think we actually, I don't know if a lot of people do this, but we have to play kids both ways. And we straight up divide the practice down the middle every single day. We don't do an offensive day, a defensive day, and then a mixed day. We do, offense gets an hour, defense gets an hour, special teams is mixed in, and we do that every single day. So it makes it a little challenging because, like you said, there's all these individual drills, group drills that you want to do for the run and shoot. So I think a lot of it when you have the opportunity. In Maryland, we have a lot of strict rules on public school about what you can and cannot do in the off season. So I think when you get your opportunities, like right now, we're going to start quarterback school in 2 weeks. And at that point, we're only allowed to work with 2 kids at a time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to it's kind of weird, but it is what it is. It's unlimited too. You can work with those 2 kids for 5 straight hours if you want, but it's like, so I'm like, whatever. So we're going to pull those kids in and we're going to work with them. So we have what we call Patriot time at the school. We're the Northern Patriots. There's a 40-minute block where the kids can go to tutoring. They can go wherever they want. So what I'm doing is Monday, Wednesday, Friday is the 2 kids that I think are going to be the varsity kids. And then Tuesday, Thursday are the other 2 kids that I think are going to be the JV kids. And we're going to go into the gym or the small gym. We have an auxiliary gym, and we're going to work drills, and we're going to work 40 minutes straight of drills, or we're going to be in the classroom going over stuff on the smart board, which we have in my classroom. Luckily, we're going to draw stuff up. We're going to watch film. We're going to go through all that, go through our quarterback training program that'll get us ready. And we're going to do that all the way up through May. So we're going to do that. That helps us so we can make up a lot of time in the offseason. Once the last spring championship hits in Maryland, we're allowed to start working with our kids as long as we are affiliated with a 7-on-7 league, and we are not affiliated with the school. So we are officially the Maryland Hustle which is the local 7-on-7 flag team that travels all over the place. So we are the Maryland Hustle, and we're going to go out, and we're allowed, once we do that, we're allowed 2 practices one practice for every game. So we have 2 practices a week. So we're allowed 2 games a week. So we're allowed 2 practices. So we're going to go out and we're going to spend time working with the kids on that. So that's big. So a lot of our technique stuff is done in the off season to get them prepared. I think I've heard that a lot from a lot of other coaches, but a lot of our stuff is that. In season, the way we break it up is we got our everyday drills, which they're going to come out. They're going to run the hoops. They're going to run right and left twice around the hoops. Then they're going to go to line catching. I think if you've listened to AJ Smith talk, he talks about line catching. Line catching is awesome. We do that. I used to be a big settle drill guy, like the air raid guys. And I've changed in the last 4 or 5 years. We are a line catching team. We're going to do that. Then we're going to go into the standard pat and go. And that's part of what we call our everyday drills, which unfortunately for the defensive coordinator, because I'm the head coach and I'm the offensive coordinator, I get the pre-practice drills every day. So it just is what it is. And then we go into an hour of offense. The first thing we're going to do is blitz drill for 10 minutes, no matter what, on Mondays and Tuesdays. I just feel like when you're a spread, if there's a potential of you being a spread team, if you don't prepare for the blitz, you're setting your kids up for failure, because eventually somebody's going to pressure you. And if you can't answer blitz, you're in big trouble, because then everybody's going to see it and everybody's going to blitz you. So blitz is a big part of it. We're going to go into that. Then we go into what we call our individual, which ends up being more group work. Our receivers and quarterbacks together, and we're going to work on streak drill. We're going to work on switch drill, go drill, choice drill. And the way I broke it up this year was Mondays, we worked all of our vertical throws. So we would put in either, depending on what we felt we needed more work at, would be either streak drill, switch drill, or divide drill. And then with the receiver that was not involved, either the X or the Z, would be over on the side with the backup quarterback working choice against a corner. And then we would obviously flip that. And then we would have routes versus air for the last 5 minutes of that 15-minute block. And we would just throw routes on air. So if we felt like glances were going to be a big thing that day on the RPO game, we would have the quarterback ride, pull, disconnect, and throw the glance for 5 minutes, right and left, and just work on timing and ball placement. After that, we went into our one-on-one period where the line did for 5 minutes, where the line did one-on-one pass protection, and the receivers went one-on-one against the DBs, because I felt like that was important to work on defeating man. And then from there, we went into 7-on-7 / inside, and then team. And that was pretty much our breakdown every single day. The only thing that changed was which drills were being done. Like Mondays was all the vertical drills and the choice. Tuesdays was our go drill. We also worked on our smash hook delay, whatever you call it, smash drill. And then we also worked on our slide drill. And then after that, and then on Wednesdays, we went ahead and worked on we took that period out and we replaced it with red zone pass, where we worked on air thrown from the 10-yard line in, because that space gets so condensed that we wanted our routes to be out on time and crisp and clean. So that's kind of how we broke it down, in the practice schedule, but we made sure that everybody got an hour every day.
Now, for people because you mentioned AJ Smith's line drill. Do you want to get a little bit more into that for coaches who are especially not run and shoot fluent? I think anybody that's in the run and shoot atmosphere obviously knows who AJ Smith is. The man wins football games. I will give him all the credit in the world.
Yeah.
And he's done a great job at branding his style of the run and shoot, and
sure,
a variety of coaches. Do you want to go a little bit more on that for people who aren't familiar with it?
Sure. Yeah. So the line drill is what we're going to do is I've seen Coach Jones do it at the Roughnecks, and I've seen people do it. They do it a little bit different ways, but the way we do it is we'll set a quarterback up on the goal line, a quarterback up on the 20, and a quarterback up on the 40, just so we have space. And at Northern, we're kind of a rural community, so we actually have, believe it or not, we have enough space on our practice fields to, I think, put 5 practice fields in. So, because we got farms all around us, so it's like we're not constrained by space at all. That's one thing we're not. So we'll have, everyone will be spread out, so we'll have plenty of room. And and we'll put those guys and they'll jog across. So we like to work from the sideline to the hash. So those kids will jog from the sideline to the hash, and then from the hash back to the sideline. And the quarterbacks will stand dead in the middle of that track. And the quarterback will pack the ball, keep his feet live, and then he's going to throw to that receiver as he jogs across the field. And the theory is that you don't throw to stationary targets very much in the game. You throw a hitch or something like that, but the majority of your routes are on the move. So this is working on kind of the similar type catching and ball skills, where we're going to teach catching with this window every time, whether it's high, head up, or low. The only time we'll flip is when we got to do pinkies, when it's below the knees. Even if it's up high, we're going to high point. We're not going to do the run and shoot thing with pinkies together with the ball over the shoulder. We're going to high point. So we're working that in those line drills. So now how are we working that? We're working that by, number one, the quarterback placing the ball in the perfect pass, what we call it. So the ball, if I'm going in this direction, the ball's going to be put right there, and I'm going to catch it. I'm going to freeze. Coach Spence taught me this term: freeze the tip, make sure that we catch it no deeper than the stripe on the football, and we're going to tuck it away, and we're going to jog across the field. Quarterback gets the next football, and we're going to go. And everybody's going to catch one pass going to the right, going from the sideline to the hash, and then we're going to do it going back from the hash to the sideline. Then we're going to work on what we call we do behind next, where the quarterback is going to throw, and he's going to force the quarterback to turn behind here. So instead of a nice easy pass here as I'm jogging this direction, and I catch it here as I'm jogging, it's going to force us to turn our entire body here to catch the football. I watched a video where Coach Morrison talks a lot about this. It's a phenomenal video, if you haven't seen it, where he talks about this motion here being the reason why the guys at Hawaii back in the day caught so many footballs and we bought into that and we do it. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to do high over the head. So we're going to force them to bring their hands up over their head. So after they go over and back doing behind, then we're going to go over and back where they have to high point the football. And the last one is they're going to have to flip their hands and catch a low ball. And we do that. And it doesn't take very long. It sounds like it does. It really doesn't. Our kids get through it in under 5 minutes. They catch, 8 footballs, whatever it is, but they work on that hand position. Number one, freezing the tip of the football. So when they catch it, they don't catch it deeper than the first stripe on the football. And number two, work on hand positioning. Okay. And number three, they're working on body control as they catch the balls in bad positions.
No, perfect, coach. Kind of as we get towards the end of this is first, what is your favorite run and shoot play? By the way, I love asking run and shoot people this because they all panic. They all panic. Every single one of them. Even Stutzman panicked. Like it's like all of them, but no.
I personally, I have to say it's Divide. I love Divide. Okay. I just think it has answers for everything. Go route can be a pain in the neck if you got a cloud and they're rolling. Coach Davis calls it, double corner, corner roll. We call it cloud because that's what our defensive coordinator calls corner roll. So we try to keep the terminology, whatever terminology we have in offense and defense. I'm sure you're doing this with your guys. Is you try to keep the terminology the same. So I always call it corner roll, but my defensive coordinator now, who's really good, Paul Hutchinson, he calls it cloud. So I'm going to call it cloud. Yeah. So when they cloud us and it's just, it's not bad play. It's just, it requires a little more teaching. And I know, I'm deep diving on Coach Poston right now with all his stuff, and his stuff is great. So I'm looking at like slide and stuff like that and trying to get better at teaching that. Cause we're thinking about putting it back in this year. So I know he swears by slide, but I really think Divide. Divide just has answers for everything. And then, you can bring a drag from the backside, run Divide. You can swap and special it and switch it and all that stuff. And I think it just has answers for all the coverages you see in high school right now.
Okay. Cause I remember I remember when I talked to Stutzman and they really didn't, I forget what his answer was off the top of my head, but we talked about choice and how he doesn't towards the end, especially I think at Hawaii and at like the first year at Washington State, they didn't really let him read choice because they just called it because most of the time they were throwing the other side anyways, like just based off because with the half roll and just how everything moved into their line of sight, those were open more with the coverages they were getting. So I was always curious on who, because I always loved choice just because of the one-on-one nature and all the route options, and really you just can't be wrong. And then if people just high-low you just run the damn ball, but that's a whole other conversation. So, curiosity, have you added, because I know that's been the discussion, is have you added any RPOs to your thought process? I know like Rollo and Stutzman were looking at it at Washington State and kind of some of the stuff that they were doing there. But have you brought any of that into your system?
Oh, big time. We're a big time RPO team. So I know that's kind of like, well, how do you do both? But my philosophy is, being a former offensive lineman, we'll sacrifice time with the drop back pass game to get better at the RPO and the run game. And that might just be because I was one of the hogs up front, and one of the, and then there's always also the fact that, magically on the sideline, my father will appear. In the state semifinals this year, it was a tight game. We weren't scoring very many points, but our defense was keeping us in it. And all of a sudden, our defensive coordinator goes, you may want to look over your right shoulder. And I looked over, and there's my father. And he's like, are you going to stop throwing the ball and run it? And I'm like, Dad, I got it. And I'm like looking for my mom in the stands, or my wife, being like, can you come get this guy? So we're a big run team, as far as RPOs goes. We're going to run the glances. We're going to run, we're going to attach our quick game onto it, like hitches and flats, like everybody else does. We have a few concepts like, I actually don't know if Coach Rollo, I don't know if Coach Stutzman, Coach Rollo at Hawaii, I stole this from them, I think, watching their game film. You know how all the high school guys do. We DVR games, and I was watching, and I'm seeing number one on a seam, number two on a slant, number one on a 5 and in cut, and I'm like, that thing is awesome because that answers man coverage too. If they try to play you, the answer for RPOs is everyone to play man. Well, we got a natural rub, So we stole stuff like that. So we're huge. I think that probably encompasses probably about 50% of our, when we get out of 7-on-7 and all said and done, that's probably about, I think 40 or 50% of our game plan each week is the RPOs and the run games and then the play actions over top to protect it. So it might be a little sacrilege saying that as a run and shoot guy, but if we're going to run go routes 7 times in a game, we're going to run glance probably 7 times off of outside zone. So we're going to run trips to the field, outside zone to the boundary, and we're going to glance the single receiver from the boundary. So it's just, and where we are, the teams that we play in high school, that's a killer right now for them. So I'm sure that's going to change. They'll probably see that, some of those guys will probably see this. It's like our third down route that we love is not a run and shoot route. I stole it from, Coach Dodge in Texas, and it's like stealing. But now everyone's catching on to it. So it's like, we can't run it anymore. People are jumping it and they know it's coming. They're actually calling it out. They're like, watch the 16-yard in cut by number one. And I'm like, crap, so we gotta find something else, so
they're just calling down and instead there you go.
Yeah. Or run it out of motion or something, but yeah. So I would say probably we're equal RPO versus drop back run and shoot.
Now, the last thing I got for you before we go, and because you've mentioned your run game a lot during this, as we talked run and shoot, obviously inside zone, outside zone, power. How do you guys, like, obviously with running the run and shoot and RPOs, that is a good chunk of your practice time.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff you got doing it, especially the run and shoot to get those routes correct and the reads. And how much time do you spend on your run game? And then kind of what is your progression? Is it like inside zone, outside zone, power? What does that kind of look like?
So our run game consists of inside, outside zone, power counter. And then we got what we call junk runs, which I just didn't know what else to call it. So I called it junk runs, which is runs that we'll run once in practice. And if it works in the game, great. We'll run it. We'll keep running it. If it doesn't, we're not going to call it again, like dart, jet sweep, things like that. But really, when we go into a game, we're going to make inside, outside zone go and power. Counter's great. If we can get it, we'll run it. But those 3 plays is what we're going to run. And the way I look at it is we spend so much time as high school coaches in the offseason on 7-on-7. If that's what you want to do, and we believe in it. So we're going to make sure that because of state rules, we're going to make sure that we're in 2 7-on-7 games a week. So that way we can have 2 practices, and we're going to spend 2 hours at those practices working nothing but pass. So the way I look at it is we've invested in the pass in the off season. Therefore, during the season, we can allow ourselves to invest more in the run. And I think that was instilled in me when I was at Hofstra, is that we were a run and shoot team. But there were times where, like I said, where we go up, we played Liberty University, and I think we ran the ball 47 times and threw it 15. My dad was laughing because he's watching it on Madison. Back then it was Madison Square Garden Network. So I'm talking late 90s, early 2000s when I was in college. And they're like, Marty Lyons was our broadcaster, and he's like, I can't believe it. They've run the ball 15 times in a row. Where's the pass? And so I think with Coach Flood and Coach Spence and those guys, Coach Ruggiero was on that staff down at Wake. And I think those guys believed in the run. And I think it rubbed off on me, where we're going to spend a lot of time in the off season, a ton of time in the off season, getting the pass game right. So that when we get in the season, we can really focus. We can not really focus, but we can put a heavy emphasis on the run game so that we know that our run game is solid. And if we need it, we got it. Like this year in the, I think it was in the state quarterfinals, we faced a team that we had beat earlier in the season. We threw for 356 yards on them early in the season. They played cover 0. They had better athletes than us, much better. And they came out and said, this is why blitz drill is important. They came out and said, we're going to pressure. We're going to lock up and play man. Good luck. Beat us. And that's what our kids did. We got the ball on the 1 yard line one time. We hit a post route for 99 yards, so the second time we played them, they came in, and we're getting ready for kind of similar thing. We're going to see pressure. We're going to see this. And they lined up with their linebackers at 8 yards deep. I'm not kidding. So we come out and we're like, well, time to run the football. And we ran the ball for 270 something yards. And the head, and it just is what it is. Like the linebackers are 8 yards deep. They're playing the pass. They're only rushed. They have a 4-man front. They're playing a 4-1 box. Even when we had a tight end in the game, we're going to put the tight end in. We're going to run split zones, insert zone. We're going to run power. We're going to run counter. We'll put the RPOs on it just to keep them honest, but we just pounded the ball. And, I think if we had tried to throw into that, I don't know what would have happened. Maybe it was, who knows what would have happened, but because we had, a good, robust, what I call robust run game, we're able to line up and we're able to say, okay, they're dropping everybody, and sometimes they even popped one of the defensive tackles out, I believe. So, it was a 3-man rush. So we're just going to pound the ball down their throat until they come back into a base defense. And that's what we did. And, we were able to come out on top and win that game and move on. So, I think I think everybody has their own flavor of the run and shoot, and no one's more right than the other. I think that's the great thing about the run and shoot is like, we don't put in all the run and shoot concepts. Like I'm listening to Coach Poston down in Virginia, and he's got the read, he's got slide. We don't have read and slide. We're thinking about putting slide back in. We've got streak, switch, divide, choice, and go. And then after that, we've got some, we've got the Hawaii, the levels route. We've got Nebraska and Georgia, but that's it. That's our drop back pass game. We don't put anything else in. Our third down route that I mentioned is a tag off 4 verticals. We just tag one guy on a 16-yard in cut, and it causes teams problems. But other than that, we're going to run the ball, and we're going to use a lot of RPOs and screens to try to mitigate some of that, teams playing drop 8.
All right, Coach. Well, that's perfect. So, Coach, I appreciate you coming on. Coaches, his Twitter will be in the bio, so give him a follow. If you want to learn more about run and shoot stuff, obviously reach out to him. And then like, share, subscribe. If you want to go back and listen to any part of this, the tags are in the bio from why the run and shoot, his variations, practicing the line drill, the RPO conversation. If you want to listen to that, that's all below. Check out our sponsors, affiliates, all that lovely stuff that's in the bio. And that was another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast.